Mr. Chairman, my amendment's an amendment that I have brought in past years, and what it does, it says none of the funds made available by this Act, including the amendments made by this Act, may be used to implement, administer, or enforce a prevailing rate of wage requirements in Subchapter 4, which is basically and referred to normally as Davis-Bacon Act. Davis-Bacon Act is a bill that was passed back in the early 30s. The purpose of it was to lock the labor out from Alabama that was going during the Depression years up into New York to build federal buildings and competing with the labor unions up there. It happened to be locking black workers out of the workforce in New York, and it was brought to us by a senator and by a House member from New York, both Republicans, by the way. It's the remaining Jim Crow law that I know of on the books, and it imposes what is called a prevailing wage on all contractors doing federal contracts that are the $2,000 or more. King Construction's been in business since 1975. That's 41 years. We've dealt with this Davis-Bacon wage scale for a long time. Not only is it expensive, and it costs the taxpayers extra money on every single in which it's imposed, but it also brings about inefficiencies that are brought about because of the reporting requirements, the confusion that's there. We happen to have happened to have seen on our jobs people that jump from machine to machine to try to get to the highest paying machine, not the most efficient one. That's just one picture of what Davis-Bacon does. There are many others, but our numbers from our company are someplace between 8 and 35%, depending on your project, that the cost of these projects are increased unnecessarily. It does not reflect prevailing wage. It reflects an imposed union scale. And this is something that this Congress has to come to grips with if we are going to ever get to balance and be responsible with the taxpayer dollars. So with that, I urge its adoption, and I reserve the balance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd say in response to the gentlelady from Minnesota that the actual application of the Davis-Bacon Wage Act is not what we would call a fair labor standard, not when you have some hacks that sit in a room once a year and decide whether and who gets how much of a raise. It's not free enterprise. It's not merit. It's based on backroom deals. It's based on imposing union scale and making the taxpayers pay for that. And if I don't hear that this year, it's the first year I haven't heard it, and that is the argument that the quality of the work isn't there. Well, the honor of our employees for 41 years and many other merit shop employees is on the line. We meet plans and specifications. They're federal projects. They are inspected, and the standard of the work is indiscernible, except that we don't happen to have union squabbles on our jobs. And we pay the wage that is necessary to keep good help. And we've had some of the lowest unemployment rates that anybody's had. In fact, my rates were zero because we kept our people on year-round. We take care of our employees. We provide a benefits package. So do the merit shop people I know. And so often I hear from the other side of the aisle that the federal government has no business interfering in a relationship between two or more consenting adults. And this is one of those cases. It's a contract of labor between the employer and the employee. The federal government needs not be involved in that. When they are, it invariably costs the taxpayers more money. We can dredge 5 harbors instead of 4. We can repair 5 locks and dams instead of 4 if we pass this. Why would we, with the starvation of resources to our interior, why would we deny those resources the most efficient application? So I urge the adoption. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, in contradiction to the gentleman who just spoke on the job injuries, I don't know what would support that. Whether or not there is a Davis-Bacon wage scale on that. That has to do with your safety policy on the job. It has to do with the culture of the company. And it has to do to agree with the culture of the projects that you're on. The fewer benefits side of this thing, I think it goes the other way. Because Davis-Bacon requires that you add dollars into this federal mandated union scale to pay benefits. And when that happens, you're paying a benefit figure on a dollar figure to the employees rather than, say, a health insurance package that's going to take care of them far better and in the long term. I point out also that today we had testimony from the Secretary of Transportation from the state of Oklahoma, Secretary Gary Ridley, who said that they run into the inefficiencies driven by Davis-Bacon, where you've got as many as 3 or more different pay scales on a single project that might stretch out over 6, 8, or 10 miles. They end up in different wage scales. So the contractors have to keep track of who crosses that line in what machine, and the confusion of all of that adds to the inefficiencies as well. But the most important thing is this. Is that the taxpayers are paying an unnecessary premium for projects that we could be far ahead of where we are right now if we hadn't had all these years of this Davis-Bacon wage scale. And I would reiterate, it's ironic that it's the Democrats that are always on the floor defending the last Jim Crow law on the books. It's time to get rid of the last Jim Crow law on the books. Let free enterprise prevail. Let the taxpayers be the beneficiaries of this. I urge the adoption of my amendment, and I will go ahead and yield.